Jackson Podcast.
What's good with y'all on this beautiful Monday? You know, I've had Judge Joe Brown on my platform before. We had a 4 hour discussion about Black History Month and about his toughest cases that he fought um, when he had the trial for Martin Luther King's assassination and all of that. And I found him to be a very knowledgeable historian. He knows a lot about history and about America. And I found him to be a credible person. A lot of people don't like his aggressive approach when he converse, but me, I just I just like people that's straightforward, that's honest, that's uh, knowledgeable about the things that they're talking about, and they speak fluently when they talk about what they're talking about. So, as of recently, this video came out on the Art of Dialogue about O.J. Simpson and was he innocent and the evidence that Judge Joe Brown said was presented to him. So to me, when O.J. Simpson died last year, I saluted O.J. Simpson because he was a hell of a player. I can separate me personally. I can separate the person from the personal. So when I think about O.J. Simpson, I think about him being acquitted. He wasn't found guilty, but a lot of people want to hold him to the fire and hold him accountable for something that he was acquitted of. Now, how would you like it if somebody did you like that? People automatically think that he's guilty, but they don't have no proof that he's guilty. So I like what he was doing with Cameron and Mace on It Is What It Is podcast. And he was speaking well about sports and different things in the culture. He was having fun with the last few months and years of his life. And I just was interested in OJ Simpson. But now let me get into the conversation. Before I play this clip, you know, LA is a place where a lot of things has happened, like gang culture, the Rodney King beating, uh, the OJ Simpson trial, the chase in the Bronco. So much has happened in LA. It's just a historic place for foolishness that happens there a lot. And when I think about the OJ Simpson case and I think about all the media it had gotten, I think about all the press it had gotten. They was had cameras in the courtroom. Was his case the reason why they can't have cameras in the courtroom in California now? Is that the reason that law was passed so they can't have cameras in the courtroom? It just was interesting. But let's get into this conversation with Judge Joe Brown saying, was he innocent? Let's get on into it, man. Let's get to it. Let's get to
To
it.
ask you about O.J. Simpson. Do you feel like he did it or no?
I know Johnny Cochran well. His number is in my phone. I've known him since 1966. He and I discussed what his strategy was. There is a reality, and his strategy dovetailed into the reality. They did not have a case against him. I listened to every scrap of the trial. I recorded it in my chambers, court chambers. I was a bachelor then. And I would listen to Nancy Grace, who would say, the evidence against OJ was devastating. There's no way he'll escape the consequences for this. So I said, who is this Nancy Grace? And I'd listen to it. I said, wait a minute, what is she talking about? It doesn't get any better than that. The uh, impound lot guy has just testified that he and his buddies went through the Bronco. There wasn't a drop of blood in it. They went through it with a fine-tooth comb. It was locked in a special enclosure that had 4 padlocks. They didn't have the keys to them, only the detectives did. They were instructed to tow the car down to the crime lab 11 days later, and now it's full of blood. Where did the blood come from? All right? The DNA evidence against OJ is devastating. And when I listened to what the expert said, he said, this is not OJ. First off, this is someone similar, but there are approximately 96,000 people in LA County that would match this DNA profile, which, by the way, and this is interesting, reflects someone from Northeast Mediterranean ancestry or perhaps from the island of Sicily. We also get something that didn't pick up in the newspapers or television. They had two people who were testifying remotely in the federal witness protection program who dated Nicole's sisters. Their testimony was that it was a message to them to keep silent, or their girlfriends, Nicole's sisters, would get exterminated. So where were they from? That hypothetical organization that's got contacts with Sicily. Now, it just happens that I know personally the guy that made the gloves. I know personally, in fact, he was my brother, the person that was the expert knife killing that the prosecution called. Now, let's start with the glove. This person told me out of his own mouth, and so did Johnny Cochran, they took a tracing of everybody's hand. OJ is a big dude. I knew him personally from college. And he wore a size, not XL, but 2XL. The glove was a size L, so they knew it wasn't going to fit. But guess who wore a size L? Furman. Guess who found the glove? Furman. Under a half foot of dead leaves, 75 feet into OJ's dark backyard, supposedly. All right. Now, my brother, who did not testify in front of the jury, when he was asked to assess the knife killing, he said, first off, OJ is a right-handed guy. Whoever did this killing is a left-handed person. Said each of the victims, Nicole and Goldman, were struck by a fatal blow with a knife turned sideways that slid in next to the central cartilage in the rib cage that tore up the aorta and upper two chambers of the heart. Then their throats were slit ear to ear.
I'm gonna stop it right there because he's giving a lot of information out like quickly, and a lot of the information that he's speaking about. Apologize, y'all. Uh, that he's speaking about. If all of those things are true, why did they press on with trying to convict him? Why did they press on with making this the most biggest trial ever? Like, uh, the glove didn't fit, and we know the famous saying, "If it don't fit, you must have quit." The impound lot didn't find blood at one time, and then a week later they found blood, and it wasn't O.J. Simpson. Now he's saying that the person who wore the glove was left-handed when O.J. was right-handed. It's just crazy to me. And if he didn't commit the crime, um, why did they press so hard? You know, uh, at this time, America was extremely racist, and it wasn't as it is today. That's what I'm gonna say. It wasn't like how it was today, and I still can't believe that he beat this charge and he got off from this crime, even if he didn't do it. And let me hold up. Let me not speak like that because I'm speaking as if he's guilty when he was found not guilty. I can only go by what was found. You know, they'll say that America is a crooked system and he should have went to jail, and they didn't have no facts, no evidence or nothing. They just was reacting with feelings and emotions and was hurt because the lady was a Caucasian lady and they wanted to see him go to jail forever. But it wasn't no proof that he did it. And Judge Joe Brown is explaining that. Let's get back into the conversation.
And somebody used some pliers to pull their tongues out through the slit throat. That's called a Colombian necktie. And meanwhile, in the blood, when they took him out on the scene, since he dealt with this kind of forensics, he says there's somebody that has a size 9 shoe and somebody that wore a size 10.5 shoe that's leaving tracks. OJ wears a size 12. And the blood that they supposedly say they found because somebody got a slight wound on something like a finger, that's the sample that has 96,000 other people in LA County that could have donated it. And it definitely wasn't OJ, but Nancy Grace said it was. Now, the problem was also this: planting evidence. The jury saw this, and Cochran brilliantly used it in final argument, a split screen. There had been so many instances where people were accusing LAPD of coming in and stealing from upscale homes that they had a security squad that would be sent in to video a scene before the crime scene detectives started their work so you could see what was in there. Well, 1:14 on the clock in the video, you can see them video the foot of the bed. There are no bloody socks. There are no socks in there at all. It's well lit. About 5 minutes later, you can hear this: "Sir, who are you?" And you can hear somebody who is identifying himself as Detective Furman, and they tell him he has to leave immediately. The jury saw this. Cochran is arguing from this at final argument. A few minutes later, "Sir, didn't we tell you you had to leave? Detective Furman, isn't it?" "Yes, sir. You got to go out of here right now." And they pan the camera around, and where is Furman? You can see through two doors into the bedroom. Furman is standing right there at the foot of the bed. 35 minutes later, when crime scene's in there, right where you saw it, 1:14, no socks at all, completely clear, right where you later saw Furman, you see now bloody socks. Now, what's the inference? Furman planted the bloody socks. You find that Furman has testified he found the size X glove that fits him that does not fit OJ, but his story is he finds it under a half-foot of leaves deep inside OJ's backyard after he climbs the fence. Furman lives 28 miles away. He's off duty, but for some reason, he comes to the scene 5 minutes after the murder occurs.
I'm gonna stop it again because you know planting evidence is interesting to hear that from Judge Joe Brown because it's two things that I think about that stood out a lot when this had happened, and I got it playing in the background. The chase. If you was innocent, I think about that a lot. Rest in peace to young Scooter, but he had just passed away from running from the police. OJ Simpson, he put his life in danger from running away from the police. A lot of people say, Trill, they think that I'm a sucker because, if I'm innocent, I'm innocent. I'm going to act like I'm innocent. Now, if OJ was innocent, why did he go through all of that? The hours, the TV coverage of being chased down I-10 or I-5 or whatever interstate that he was on at that time. Why do that? Why deal with that if you was completely innocent? Now, back to the evidence being planted. You know, the people that is older than me, they can attest to this, but the people that's younger than me, they may not have no thought or recollection that OJ Simpson was that boy. He was the man. He was in Hollywood. He was a superstar, an actor, a hell of a football player, the first player to average 2,000, well, to get 2,000 yards in a season. Somebody could have wanted this stopped because he was a powerful black man and he was in a powerful position. Somebody could have wanted this stopped and somebody could have planted evidence on him. I don't doubt that, especially being in Los Angeles where crime is through the ceiling. But listening to Judge Joe Brown speak about this, it's clearing up some things that over the years I I thought that OJ wasn't guilty. I really thought that because you know during that time with all of the riots, we was having riots and everything in the 90s. The 90s was crazy. Me coming up as a teenager around that time, the 90s had a lot going on. I remember watching television in the war, the Iraq war. what is it, Desert Storm going on, the beating of Rodney King. It was just so much going on in the 90s that it was crazy. And when this OJ Simpson thing hit, it bursted wide open. And me knowing how big of a celebrity he was and how big of a movie star, he might have been a super movie star after he left the NFL. Who knows? But he was a mega star. And I can see how somebody would want to plant evidence on him to get him locked up. Let me play judge.
He also was subject to testimony that he had been over to visit Nicole at least 11 times and he was trying to talk to her, date her. There was also evidence that the jury here heard that, by the way, Nancy Grace said nothing about, where OJ caught her giving a head job to somebody on the couch, having sex with somebody on the couch, and the witnesses all say he was mad, but in the lines of, don't you know that the kids could come down and catch you? Why don't you deal with somebody who's not so broke they don't have an apartment or a hotel or a motel? If you need it, goddammit, I'll give you the money. Just don't spend it on drugs. If OJ did what they said, he had just returned from a recital with his two daughters. He would have had to been prepared. Baby, girl, if you hear mama screaming, it's just daddy killing her. Go tell your baby sister not to panic. I won't hurt anybody. That is not the way it went down. All that stuff in there was garbage. The jury stayed out less than half an hour from people that I talked to who were present. Later, after I had the show, after I got a chance to look through all of the evidence, because some judge that I had recruited to UCLA happened to be granting me access to look at the pictures and look at the physical evidence. They had absolutely nothing on him but what Nancy Grace put out. And that sleazy woman, who has got a history of that kind of behavior, convinced the American public that OJ was guilty, and they didn't have one shred, one scintilla of evidence. Now, Johnny Cochran told me, he said, Joe, what I did was this. I just got people over 45 years old, 40 years old, who grew up in Los Angeles, who understood that LAPD would lie. So they weren't freaked out by the proposition, and they just found LAPD was telling a big lie. That's basically what it was. They planted the evidence. Now, you want to get the kicker? There's what they call the Rampart scandal. The 4 chief detectives in the OJ case went to jail for planting evidence that resulted in 128 men being released from the California penitentiary because these low-down bastards planted it. These are the same 4 chief detectives involved in the OJ case. Also caught on tape was one of these lab technicians bringing OJ's 10 cc sample of blood back to the scene. What did you do with it? Well, I don't know. Did you bring it back to the lab? I think I lost it on the scene. The testimony they got from somebody that was an expert in that was that the blood sample you got, they tried to plant 10 cc's of OJ's blood, but it had decayed, so they didn't get anything out of it. But fortuitously, somebody else there that did do a little bleeding, which couldn't have been OJ because he had no wounds, and they brought in an airline co-pilot to testify that he got OJ's autograph in the flight log, and he had no wounds, and the guy sitting next to him played blackjack with him all the way to Chicago, said he didn't have any cuts on his hands. So they tried to plant the evidence. And that's exactly what they did. Like Johnny Cochran said, it was a rush to judgment. And actually, most of the defense lawyers I know and several of the criminal judges I know at the time who looked at this said they had probable cause to indict Furman, but they didn't. And who was it that cut their throats ear to ear and pulled the tongue out? And who was it that just hit the same death blow to each of them from the perspective of somebody being a left-handed person, taking out the aorta and two upper chambers of the heart. That was a pro. Now, here's one thing from the many homicide trials I'd either represented somebody with or presided over. Amateurs expect when they stab somebody, it'll be like in the movies, and they fall over. Absolutely nothing happens. They stab them. This dude ain't done nothing, man. This Superman, hell. Boom, let me stab him again. Hell, nothing happened. Boom, let me stab him again. And you get 15, 20, 25 stab wounds until they add up so the person starts hemorrhaging enough so the blood pressure is more quickly dropping. A pro knows I just killed him. He might not act like it for a little while, but he's dead. And it was a pro that did it, and there were at least two people on the scene who are responsible for it. And there you go. That would exclude OJ. So actually, from some of the courtroom personnel and a couple of judges who peeped in on the trial, they said they didn't have anything on OJ. And they agreed with me. It was Nancy Grace that just lied and said there was something on OJ because she was trying to make her way. This was her first assignment, and she wanted to ensure her career in television.
Okay. It's just a few minutes of the clip left. If y'all want to go check that out, go to The Art of Dialogue. He has phenomenal content. Make sure you subscribe to his channel and check him out, man. He has a great content. But I want to talk about my first time like being aware of news media. It was Nancy Grace, and she was good at her job. She was real passionate and emotional at her job, and she could make you believe things. And what Judge Joe Brown saying about her is right. I ain't gonna say nothing malicious against her or whatever, but now she is on YouTube and she doing the same thing. To be honest with you, she's very passionate with her takes or whatever. And it was crazy hearing him say that the girl that they claimed OJ's ex-wife or his girlfriend or whatever she was cheating. She was a junkie. And she was cheating with white guys. Black dudes don't crash out over their women like white guys. White guys will crash all the way out. They will lose it all. They love them white women. They love them to death. They'll do anything about them. And they'll crash out. They'll go to court about them. They will hinder somebody else and see somebody else get a life sentence when they did the wrong. They crashed out about it. And the last thing I want to say that caught my attention about this is that, you know, it's scary to live in a country with crooked law enforcement. And it's probably like that worldwide or whatever, though. But crooked law enforcement is something that I've came across in my lifetime that I don't want to experience anymore. It's just that when you have law enforcement planting things on people and setting people up and people getting life sentences and they putting evidence on you. I remember one time I was threatened by a police officer that he was going to plant something in my car and they was going to charge me for it. And I was like, what did I do? I didn't even do nothing. I didn't even talk bad to you or none of that type of stuff. It was just that you don't like me because I'm me. And that made me appreciate my freedom a lot. It made me appreciate my presence in life because somebody that don't even know you can hate you to the point to where they want to see you took out. They want to see you do a life sentence. They want to see you in trouble. And that could have been the whole thing with this case. She was cheating. She was on drugs. A white man crashed out, went crazy, killed her, and harmed other people, and threw it all on OJ. Uh, I ain't saying that's what happened. I like this interview and this conversation from Judge Joe Brown. Rest in peace, OJ Simpson. This is a conversation that'll be going on long before or long after I'm dead and gone. People will still be studying this thing and trying to figure out what is the truth because we'll never know. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to my podcast, man. Let's further the discussion in the comment section below. Peace, love, plenty abundance. Make sure you go get you some money. And I'm gone.
Jackson Podcast.